What up, guys? It is Modern Craftsman Monday, and this week we have Andy Moore from Modern Oak Construction. He's going through a little tough time. Reached out to us. Tyler put a SOS for a last-minute guest on for the podcast, and he reached out and said, "Listen, I got something to talk about," and we talk about it.
Andy's awesome.
But then hold on.
Whoa.
And then John talks about exit interviews, which I've never even heard of, but I think we're all going to start implementing it.
I don't even have an entry interview.
No. Make sure you guys listen to this one.
It's a good one.
I'm Andy Moore, owner of Modern Oak Construction. We're in Lynchburg, Virginia, and surrounding counties. We've been in business for about 5 years. We do remodels and new construction trim for other builders. We've done a few spec houses, and we do a couple of custom houses when we can get our hands on them.
Crazy. I didn't realize you'd only been in business for 5 years.
I had the same exact thought.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've
You really hit the ground running. I feel like 5 years I was still like building fences.
Well, I did a lot of stuff
still am building
prior to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a lot of stuff. I mean, I did a lot of stuff prior to that. I had a small on the side renovation company for, 2 or 3 years while working for another builder in town. So kind of doing that, getting my feet wet on that side of things.
So you were you always working in the trades, like after high school, college, any of that stuff?
No. So I didn't know what I wanted to do after school. I was actually in retail. I was at CVS pharmacy, and I was a assistant manager for several years. So I was in the retail. I thought that was what I was going to do. I thought I was going to go the district manager route, and it didn't really pan out. I didn't know what I wanted to do after that. So we ended up going to school, trying to figure out what I was going to do. Took some civil engineering classes, found out I like structural engineering pretty well. And then that didn't really transfer. So I happened to be working in construction at the time, sweeping floors and mopping up and different things like that, all the lackey stuff. And then kind of realized that I liked the framing element to it and understanding the structural aspect to it while I was in school. And then once I found out that wouldn't transfer with the Central Virginia Community College where I was, I just kind of thought I would try the trades doing construction and see how that turned out. And it's just been going ever since.
So the CVS thing, was that post high school or during high school?
During high school. Yeah, I was a junior in high school when I started working there.
Where'd the Modern Oak name come from?
I was looking for something that would kind of play off of, a newer take, open to new ideas. There's a lot of old school thinking in this area. So I was trying to look for something kind of new like that, but then also more of a traditional approach at the same time. So it's kind of fusing the two together.
Okay.
Oh, who's going on? Jesus, and my audio's cutting out. I might as well just leave. Quickly ruining this podcast.
You good?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
All right, you're recording, right?
It's stash
Yeah.
season.
All right.
I can't get over the
recording.
stash.
Andy,
All
so
right,
you do a wide range.
We can't just leave that.
What?
Hold on. All right, John. So my mustache. Let's devote a couple of minutes to let's discuss the elephant in the room. First off, I feel like it's not that abnormal for me to have a mustache. 2, the family Halloween I need a mustache for, and my beard, I felt like it was getting uncomfortably long for me. So I was like, Rachel said, you can't shave the mustache off. So I just left it.
She likes the mustache.
Yeah, it's growing on me, literally.
This entire podcast, I'm gonna think about what your family Halloween costume is going to be.
I mean, I could tell you, but I'm gonna have to trim it for the costume.
You're Hitler.
That would be a really
Definitely gonna have to
dark
pull
thing.
that out of the podcast.
It's not sponsored.
Yo, who's Cat?
Oh,
We
no.
lost Andy. I told him about headphones too.
Oh, he's back.
Oh, he's back.
Oh,
Man, I don't know what that was. Sorry. That was a weird glitch.
Where did we lose you at, mustache?
Mustache. Lost me at
He was
mustache.
like-
All of a sudden,
he's like, I'm
gotta
out.
Drop the call.
I'm out.
Oh, jeez.
Adam's family. So the dad has a pretty sweet stash.
Sweet.
So that's what it's for. But I kind of like it anyway. Jeremy, I heard from Jeremy Cottingham for the first time in like 6 months today because he saw my mustache on Instagram and then called me. No lie, I've talked to him like 6 months.
It's amazing.
I'm gonna see him Thursday.
Sorry,
For your
Andy.
stair?
Install, baby.
I thought
Install?
that was my.
The whole stair?
Yeah.
That thing looks sweet.
Watch out.
So I hijacked Andy's entire company and passed to talk about my mustache, but it's back.
But that's
It's
okay.
It's back onto you. So you were
Well,
Nick asked about the name of the company some.
Yep.
Right. I was asking about the CVS and like post high school and kind of how you ended up. You don't have any family or anything in the trades?
No, first generation in it.
So you were looking to be able to transfer credits at your community college and they wouldn't let you?
Yeah, well, they only transferred 2 courses within the civil engineering program, which I didn't know at the time, and that was fluid mechanics, like hydraulics, and surveying, and I didn't really enjoy either one of those. So
you were like, I'm out. I'm just going to start a company?
No, I was the guy I was working for at the time. I was like, I guess I'll give this a try, give it a shot for a couple of years and see how it goes and see where it takes me. Doing the retail management thing, I was used to working with customers and people, and so it kind of was an easy transition working with clients. And I think they saw that as a win for them when I was on kind of entry level, but I worked really well with the clients.
How big was this company?
It was like 4 guys and the owner.
So relatively small.
Yeah, so about what I hope to be. Am sometimes, I'm not sometimes.
Well, before we get there, because that is a big topic we want to talk about, but you open this podcast with a wide range of scope of work. Specs,
Yep.
custom, remodel, installing trim for other builders.
Yeah.
What?
Hold on. So you say specs? That's not just trim in the spec. That's
No.
he
We
was
did a couple of.
Yeah, no. Just,
we did a.
It sounds like
Right.
it's- Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yep.
building custom homes, building spec homes, and installing trim for other builders and remodeling.
Yes, currently.
My
yes.
bandwidth's already gone. I don't know how to do
Yeah,
that.
that's so.
That failed my first company.
Where did you start and what led you down? I mean, those are 4 different companies.
So when I got started, I was working for a spec builder. In our area, we don't have a national home builder, so it's just smaller builders.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 or 3 builders will go into and develop a neighborhood, and those 2 or 3 builders will purchase all the lots, and then they develop it themselves. So that's what I got my start in. So it was the natural progression of what I thought I wanted to do. But John, as we've talked before, that our cost to build here is totally different than a lot of other places. We're like at $150 a square foot, roughly, is what our cost to build is in our area.
For spec, right?
And custom-ish.
Okay.
We don't have a really high end in new construction here.
Okay.
We have a little bit of a higher end in the remodeling in this area. But new construction kind of caps at about 600, maybe 700,000. We don't have a whole lot of larger tier range here.
Okay.
So anyway, we did the I thought the natural progression was specs. So I tried that. I didn't like doing it because I like doing some of the nicer things. And what happened was, I would put it in, but the house next door that was selling for the same price wasn't doing the same, tweaks or whatever. And so that was literally money out of my pocket.
But someone someone would argue that point, right? Is that you could market it differently. You could
Sure.
sell the value, right?
I
Yeah.
would and have.
And I'm playing devil's advocate here. So
Sure.
because I think we talk about this a lot. The different markets in the U.S. John and I are in a lucrative market. Tyler brings it up that they don't have a market that's comparable, and I like the fact that you're
Right.
coming in with another market that's not comparable. But
Right.
in the you're getting right at the why you didn't like building specs, because you were putting stuff into homes that essentially was coming out of your pocket.
Mhm.
What I come in and say, oh, well, you should have marketed it better, or you could have marketed it better and sold the value, but I've never been in that position. I've never built
Yeah.
a spec, right? What was the deciding factor? Were you literally watching people walk into your house and walk into the house next door and be like, that one's cheaper? Or was it, how did that play out to the point where you decided that I don't like this?
Well, at one, like at about $140, $150 a square foot, there's not a lot of wiggle room. So every little thing added up really quickly.
Mhm.
And then especially in that price bracket. So, people would come in and say, oh, I love that, that wall, that actually, the detail wall, the accent wall. And ultimately that's what pushed mine to sell more, but I couldn't charge more for it because when it comes down to it, a lot of people in this area are looking for just the sticker price, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Is that,
So it's from a spec house market, it's really hard to sell the value in that.
were they self-funded?
Yeah. I mean, I had a loan to do those, and
But no investor. So what I'm getting at with that question is, was someone else pulling the string saying, hey, no, you can't do that, or you have this much money?
no, it was totally up to me, whatever I wanted to do.
But he was at risk.
Right. You were
Yes,
at
correct.
risk, right.
Yeah. Well, and then, when you get down to it and you're like, okay, so, you pay realtor fees and all this kind of stuff. And then in the end, you're like, okay, well, there's X amount left. If I put $1,500 into this, wall detail or whatever around a fireplace or whatever, that's $1,500 out of like a $10,000 potential profit.
Yeah.
That's
Were you paying yourself an hourly rate, or were you basically going into thinking that
I would
the
pay
profit?
myself. I would pay myself if whatever I was physically doing as my own sub. So I
Sure.
would pay myself if I was doing the trim work or anything like that, and then whatever was left in the end after everything was paid and
That was
everything
kind
settled
of
out.
the profit, the management.
I mean,
thing.
next one you could
Yeah.
probably find a cheaper trim guy.
Yeah, probably.
Just saying. No, I guess my question for you, Andy, is that I definitely understand that battle, and it's very, very tough. But I think once you do find, I guess it's that funnel that we all talk about in that industry, is where you don't want to have a funnel where it's going down, where your market's getting smaller and smaller. You want it to be open. Is that market there for spec that you can? I mean, obviously it's tough to have the time frame to educate them because it's the spec, you want to sell it. But if one does get out there in the market and people know about it, doesn't that create a draw for that kind of quality?
That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's what your
That's what I'm
motive is.
doing. Yeah.
Like, I'm going to build better homes to change the neighborhood.
In the hopes that people catch on,
Right.
and they'd rather have that because now they're seeing what that quality is, and then you're able to it's not an immediate thing,
Mm-hmm.
but you're able to maybe get $100,000 more for that house, opposed to someone else that's putting in the media. That's what I'm seeing in my market, regardless of the numbers.
Sure.
It's just there's a lot of guys in my market that are building junk. They're putting in tons of molding to trick everyone. It's like a guy wearing a crazy hat just to take the attention away from his face, and it's like, it's like there's ways to do it right. I guess is it just not the risk was too high to be able to do that, or you didn't see enough people receiving that quality?
Yeah, it just in this area, it seems like you have to do it's quantity above quality within the price bracket for what you can make on a spec house is not a ton.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do a lot of them in order to really make a decent go at it. And I don't have the upfront capital to do 5-6 houses a year, which is what the minimum range would be here to make something enough to make it worthwhile.
Right.
And so and honestly,
I feel like in your market, if that's like a middle class market where 600,000-700,000 is the top of the price point, you're not breaking into that area or like that demographic where they're willing to spend money on stuff that's not necessity. So I think that, like, even though the numbers are different than John's market, I don't necessarily think that it's the same, because I feel like when you have more money or a higher budget, people are willing to splurge for things that they may not necessarily need. But when you have a much tighter budget, like where you are, those necessities are way more important than having like the extras. You know what I mean? If they don't have the money for it, they don't have the money for it.
Yeah, well, the other thing in this area is, a lot of people want to spend money on the pretty things. They don't really care as much about the insulation and the exterior, window package and all that kind of stuff. It's just give me the pretty stuff. And most of the people here, don't live in their houses for that long. So they're looking to turn a profit, I think, within that too. They live in it 2-3 years.
That's such a bummer, though.
Yeah.
Like I talk to clients now, and like the trigger for me is like we're trying to build a forever house. I'm like, I'm not a dancer, but I'll dance. Like that's when I'm like, oh, I found the right one again. Thank God. But
well, and see, finding the Instagram community within that is it's seeing what everyone's doing and finding like the cool stuff, and that kind of was how I got linked in with a local designer, which is allowing me to do some of those cooler projects and spend more money in a higher price bracket.
Right.
And I can actually make more money on a remodel than I can on a spec house in less time. And I can do more of them than I can do houses.
Yeah. So how do you establish that relationship?
That was now ironically one of the first spec houses I did was the one that I got her to walk through to kind of see where my quality was at, which was a benefit. So, I mean, there was benefit from doing it. It wasn't necessarily monetarily at the time, but it definitely acted as kind of like a portfolio that she could walk through and see how we did things. And that really helped. But she found me through Instagram, and Instagram wasn't really a big thing locally. So I kind of caught that on the uphill swing in my area. So that helped really from a marketing standpoint too, where she was able to, she found me and she reached out to me because of what she saw on Instagram. And then it kind of started that relationship.
Did you guys hear that?
Dude, I thought there was a baby crying. It's a cat.
Dude, I threw it out of this room. But it's raining out. He's usually outside. I threw him out of this room because I'm trying to record a podcast, and now he's sitting in the kitchen.
He doesn't care.
Like whining.
In the studio.
No respect.
In the studio.
No. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Excuse me. In the podcast studio.
That's why I don't have a cat, dude.
Not laundry room or cat's bedroom.
Andy, I think that's a really good point that you bring up is the designer relationship, because you made the reference that she brought you into a higher market, right? And I think that's, that does go hand in hand a lot, where it's when someone is hiring a professional to help design the home or renovate or build a home.
Or, draw it.
Or draw it, right. There's that expectation that this isn't a spec. I'm not picking this out of a catalog. This is something that I'm building, the way I want. And they're essentially in the driver's seat as to what they're spending and how much things cost.
But I mean, for me,
sorry.
Good. I feel like for me, it's I know that the client has a commitment of understanding of finances.
Right.
At that point, meaning if someone comes to me, like you guys all know, they have the profile that you click off on your website, and it's like, oh, no designer, no budget, no architect. It's like you have no idea. But if they come to me going, I have an architect, I have a designer, I have that, it's like, all right, so someone's already approached them on, hey, this is the fee structure, and they've already committed to it. So I'm already like, all right, I can skip chapter 1 and 2.
Dude, I want to pull something out of what you just said. This I never thought of adding that to like your initial website email.
Yeah.
Like, hey, do you have an architect or designer? Yeah. We ask the budget, the schedule, things like that.
No, I do the other
but
two.
I just want to shed light on that. I feel like that is a good point. When you know that they have them, you kind of sit a little taller in your seat. Like, all right, they understand where
Google
we're
them and go, all right, who does this designer match my flow? I know I can build anything, but it's like,
of course,
that sounded egotistical, but I'm just like
anything. High rises, got it.
Because I know someone will pick that apart and write a review on that.
Please
part.
do, someone,
and
we will Venmo you.
But I look at it, I'm like, all right, that person's cool, or that designer. I'm like, I want to. Now I'm amped to do every job, but it's like that's a cool kind of atmosphere to be involved in.
I'd be amped to do every job if I could build anything too.
But I mean, that's. Designers are cool.
Andy, I don't want to beat a horse here or beat a dead horse.
My question to Andy is: so that market existed, but you didn't see it until the designer opened your eyes.
That's where I was going with this.
Right. I hadn't quite got to that level. There's a difference in my town, a huge difference between new construction and the remodeling game, I guess. A lot of the higher end, like I said, is in the remodels because mainly because of the hospital here in the area, and they employ a ton of people, a lot of doctors, and they have to be within a certain range of the hospital, and the hospital is in town. So all the older homes in that area are constantly going through changing this up and doing this and redoing because they can't really go further than the radius of the hospital that they allow. So that really helps to keep that.
So that's what's
that
driving
area booming.
That higher end market in renovation, because it's probably very difficult to build new construction in that area.
Right.
Or
and we don't have the trend of knocking an old one down and rebuilding here, at least yet.
I thought it was going to be the Jack Daniels distillery. Isn't that somewhere down there? Isn't it?
No, that's in Lynchburg, Tennessee.
Close enough.
So Andy, on that same kind of spur, do you think you couldn't recognize that because you were in the middle of completing these specs, like you were buried in the work and didn't look out far enough to see?
Yeah, I just didn't know that existed. I didn't have any idea that market existed in my area. When I found Instagram, I was like, look at all these cool products and these things that people are using, and I was like, that'll never happen here. And then I finally got into this side of things and finally saw that people are actually asking for some of the different finishes, and I had never even heard of M-Tech doorknobs until a couple of years ago when we did one of the remodels, and that's what the designer spec'd, and I had no idea that they even existed.
So
was she working with contractors before? Was she unhappy with the contractors she working with? Because I feel like you've been getting fed a fair amount of work from.
Yeah, so she moved to the area. I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, and she was doing some flips with her husband, different things like that. And so she kind of found out through that process that she enjoyed doing the design element and really seeing a project from start to finish and redesigning the space and changing walls and different things. So she got to the point where she couldn't, she didn't have a contractor's license, so she couldn't do that. So she was looking for someone that kind of saw things the way she did, that could identify with that.
So John's
I didn't do it. I'm
John's
sorry.
approach here with spec, because I feel, and again, I'm not trying to steer you back down the road of spec, but I just want to.
Don't worry, you can't.
I want to peel this open, right?
My wife won't let me.
But
no, I don't want to.
But John goes in it. He has Matt Sargent, Island Architects. They come in. They're doing a full design. The stuff that you were building was there an architect involved? Was it right? Could there have been, or is there a market for architect driven homes? Is that more?
There was one company here in town there's 2 companies that had kind of an architect in-house, a designer in-house, kind of like a one-stop shop.
Mm-hmm.
One of them folded because they put too many people in the payroll, I guess, too many higher ups, and they just couldn't sustain it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is doing really well, but they're also doing a lot of commercial stuff. So I think that helps to kind of bridge the gap on the residential.
Yeah.
So in-town is pretty heavily developed at this point?
There's really nowhere new in town. It's all in the exterior counties where all the developing is happening.
So are you shifting more towards renovating versus new construction now?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would think that if you had asked me a year ago, I would say, yes, we're going 100% all in on remodels. Mm-hmm. Since then, I've found some other builders have found me and wanted us to do some of their trim work or their higher end stuff that the regular trim guys can't do, like beam work and coffered ceilings. And
how are you balancing a renovation and then doing trim for another builder?
Yeah, it's super hard. We're doing it, but it's we get to a point of remodel where the plumber, electrician, or whatever is in there, and we can kind of pull out for a few days, and then we can do this other trim project. And usually it averages out to where we're not stacked on top of each other. But sometimes it does get to where they all land at the same time, no matter how hard I try to schedule it differently.
Nature of the beast.
Yeah, I think that's
right.
I mean, early on, when it was just 2 or 3 of us, we were doing the same thing.
That was like a week. Then you hired 10 more people.
But we were doing the same thing. We'd take on we were doing remodels and then supplementing the carpentry time with small trim projects or small carpentry projects. But exactly what you said is it's very difficult, especially schedule, because then it's like, well, now your plumber needs something, you're back over there, where it's like, now we're focused strictly on doing, renovations and running a project start to finish.
So hard to pull off a job too. Like you lose so much efficiency jumping from one job to another.
Just loading the tools out.
Yeah, like it seems like you're doing a lot, but when you actually add up the time, I feel like anytime that I work more than one job at a time, it's like, oh yeah, I doubled the amount coming in. And then I look how long each job took me, and I'm like, it would have been way shorter had I just worked one through and then the other through.
Well, and to try to get over that hurdle, I've been really looking for carpenters that I can, bring them in and say, okay, here, this is what I need you to do today, and then let them at it, and it's really hard to find really good qualified people here. And so I've been forced to kind of going back and getting new, younger people kind of entering into the trades to try to train them in the way I like to do things, and the way people expect it to be done if we're doing the job.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the route I've been going, just because it's really hard to find experienced guys that that are here or aren't already, at some other company locally.
Or that you want.
Right.
Or that I want.
That don't have bad habits.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tyler and I were talking about this the other day. We're in a similar position where we were doing so many projects at once. And to Tyler's point, it's like, yeah, we're doing 2 jobs at once or 3 jobs at once, but it just, everything took way longer, where, we made the conscious decision to hit the brakes and reset everyone and set it up where we're going to structure our projects where we start the job and we're dedicated there until it's complete, because we'll end up with a better job. We'll end up on a better schedule, being able to maintain the budget and schedule. That was something that I struggled with hard. And I think back to when we were doing small carpentry projects and renovations, or we'd slip something in. It never worked, and everything always ended up coming out great. But we always look back and said that could have been a little bit better, and the schedule could have been way better. So, you went through a recent change. I think this is what kind of stemmed this whole podcast and this conversation. But you lost a couple guys, right?
Yeah.
Can you divulge some information on that?
Yeah. So I mean,
this is an investigation.
Addresses, or maybe their Instagram handles will start sending us some hate mail.
Oh, I was gonna hire
So back in January, I had 4 guys working for me, and I kind of had theoretically had it set up where I was going to have 2 guys doing new construction trim and 2 guys focused on the remodeling, and I was going to bounce back and forth depending on who needed me where and when what was going on. That lasted for about a month. And one of the guys left because somebody else said that they'd pay him an extra like $1 more an hour.
Jeez.
And so he left, didn't ask me or talk to me or anything. He was just like, hey, I'm doing this. And he said, I'm only going to be here another year in town, and then I'm leaving. So I'm going to try to make as much money as I can. I was like, okay. So he left. I was down to 3 guys. My other guy, who had been with me for about 2 years, when he started, I asked him, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And he said, I want to be teaching carpentry in a classroom setting sometime in my life. Well, that opportunity was offered to him. And so he took that, and I was like, you have to take it. You cannot say no. You got to, do that. So I was really excited that he got that position. So he's at one of the local high schools now doing that.
Hopefully training your next employee.
Yeah, well, I've already talked to him. I was like, hey, anybody that sounds good, like let them know and, send them my way. So, maybe that'll work out. And so then I had 2 guys left. The other guy, his wife took a new job, and he had been with me about a year, and he had come a long way in his learning carpentry and finished carpentry and that kind of thing. And so I like to think that, the efforts that I made to help sort of train him and bring him along, he's down at Finish Point in Knoxville, or Sean's old company.
Yep.
So he got down there about a few weeks ago, he loves it. And I'm really happy for him in that situation too. And so then it was kind of down to me and another guy who had been with me for a while, and he was kind of I was training him to sort of take over the management side of stuff, or to at least help, mitigate some of that I was doing. And he had another opportunity that came along, and he just, he took it and he was gone, like no notice or anything. So that really left me in the lurch because we had a lot of projects going. What's that?
What's the time frame here? Because you started in January. Where are we at time?
The guy that went to be a teacher, that was back in June. So I had two guys through the summer. I had another guy that came on in August, more of like a seasonal thing.
Mm-hmm.
He said I might not stay through the winter, but it was enough to kind of get us over the hump. And then the guy that went down to finish point, he left about three weeks ago.
Oof. So is it just you right now?
I did a mad dash on Facebook ads and help wanted and different things like that, Indeed.com. I got back a lot of just terrible
junk
candidates.
Indeed
just junk.
is terrible. We did it once.
I got no one from that.
It was like 80 people applied, and none of them were qualified.
Yeah.
It was like
it was
nuts.
Yeah, I was surprised at how many people responded. It was like education left blank, work history left blank. I was like, I don't even know why you're taking the time to even do this. But I found a young kid that I just hired on. He just graduated back in the spring. He said that he was really interested in learning the trade of carpentry and was very excited about it. He had done a lot of set building in the theater program. And he said that was something he didn't really realize he would like, but he had been doing it for 2 years building sets, and he really enjoyed that and thought that might be something he was interested in doing as a career, which really spoke to me. So brought him on as an apprentice. And then I got another guy that we just hired on that has a little bit more experience, and we're just seeing how things go. But all in all, they're still on the greener side of the coin.
Yeah, they're also going to be on the greener side of Modern Oak, and what your expectations are. So so 3 weeks ago till today, you went from 2 guys back up to 3. But what's your workload right now? Like what's
we have like 3 remodels going. We have 2. We had 2 houses that we've trimmed out, and we have 1 house that we're doing some of the extra things in that the builder's trim crew can't do. So like some beams and coffer ceilings and stuff like that. And then we have a couple other projects that are supposed to get started. One that starts tomorrow. And then we have a custom house that came through. When I swore off no more specs, then the realtor that I've been working with brought me another a client that was wanting to do a custom, because they were looking for somebody that would be a little more, the value would be there. So that actually is finally.
How do you have the time to be on this podcast right now? That's a lot of work. I mean,
my mind's racing.
Right.
Yeah,
it is. Every day it's in the field. So like I get up and I'm out, until usually I get home about 6:30. Have dinner, spend time with the kids.
You're belt on in the field all day.
Yeah, I have to be. There's no one else to do.
But what I do? Which project?
But how? Yeah, how?
Are you dedicated to one job all day?
No. I'm, kind of bouncing all over the place depending on what's going on. Usually I have it, like I said, staggered out enough that I can, I go and meet the electrician, set him up for the day, and then I'm gone. But I have the guys set up the night before, what they can do for a couple hours in the morning to kind of keep things moving, keep things rolling along. And then I get back with them and pick it up where we left off.
So you're basically hitting job sites, touching base with the subs, making sure that they're in good shape to be productive for the day, and then you're connecting with your 2 guys, and you guys are working as a trio on some carpentry.
And then do you circle back at the end of the day to the other sites?
Usually it's via phone, and I've been lucky to finally find some good subs that I can count on. I mean, I went through a lot that weren't that great, and so I finally got some good ones that'll actually, send me pictures, send me updates, and are very open to, discussion.
How'd you find those guys?
Kind of remote. Process of elimination.
But like, how'd you initially see them? Like, how'd they even get on your radar? Like the yellow pages? What are we talking?
No, I mean, it was, I started out with the subs that I was used to using through the spec house market. Then I quickly found out that a lot of the spec new construction people weren't that great for remodels and vice versa. So I started reaching out.
That's a legit question.
Yeah, it was. You find out that there are mistakes made and different ways they handle themselves around the clients and different things like that. And you're like, dude, I cannot have this guy on the site anymore. After this job is done, I got to find somebody else. So I start calling around and asking some other local people who they're using and different things like that. And they're all, one of my reps at the lumber yard, I'll ask him, hey, do you know anybody that does, who do you know that does drywall good, or who do you know that is a good recommendation, and he'll give me usually a couple, 3 people and say, I can't, vouch for them, but these are the people that others are using. So I'll reach out and make phone calls and see if they're open to it, if they're open to, taking us on to do some of our projects, and then see how it goes, trial and error.
What are your remodeling jobs consist of right now?
We have a pretty large kitchen remodel it's called a kitchen remodel, but it was more like a first level remodel with the way we shifted walls and moved some things around.
That's the one you were reframing the ceiling on? Yes.
Yep. So that one is one of our larger ones right now. We're getting close to the end on that one. We have a small kitchen refresh where basically just come in, take the cabinets down, new floors, update the cabinets, countertops, that kind of thing. So that was kind of not a really heavy hands-on as much for me, because I could sub a lot of that stuff out. And we have, trying to think. So we have an addition that's going on right now too.
I love the giggle. That's like stress related. I feel like.
Yes, it is.
So on these jobs, you guys are primarily focusing on carpentry. Are you doing any of the flooring? Like, you don't do any tile work, you don't do any paint work?
No. One of the things I've learned is to try to stay more focused on what we're efficient at and what we're good at. And I really enjoyed the trim work. I'm set up for that. I have a lot of tools to do that. I kind of over the years have been setting up for potentially having 2 crews at some point. So I have enough that I can, have a trailer. I can leave the trailer on one site and the guys have enough stuff to work from there. And I can take what I need with me. And then, like, if I pull one guy with me and leave 2 guys on site, so we have enough tools that we can kind of spread it out.
With the addition and with the custom home, are you doing the framing?
No, we only frame small. I call it light framing. So, we'll do like a basement, sure. Or, if it's some framing adjustments, we'll do that. But no, if it's a full scale frame, we don't do it.
So you're subbing that out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's the goal here? Because you've gotten rid of the specs.
Try and make it out alive.
Aren't we all?
So true.
But what is the ultimate goal for the company? I think you started to talk about it, having the 2 crews, but what would be what do you want to focus on?
Yeah, it's hard because I love the new construction trim. I guess it's because it's what I started in and it's what I love doing it. But I also really love the challenge of the remodels and kind of the game plan and figuring out, the details of, or being asked to do something kind of, off the wall and figuring out a way to do it and figuring out a way to bring that, that vision to life. So I really like that aspect too. So it's really hard to choose. Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately, if I can't find enough people to kind of do the 2 crew kind of thing, I think I'm going to have to eventually make that decision. And the remodeling is what's going to, I think, sustain me if there is another, downturn in the economy. That was the only thing that kept guys going here locally, because when that happened back in 2008, the new construction market just came to a screeching halt. So I also have that in the back of my mind too. So, if honestly, I could probably make a really good go at it with new construction trim, but that's not as sustainable to me.
Sure. Yeah, I think the remodeling, we talked about that before, is that the remodeling, there's always going to be old homes. There's always going to be some sort of remodeling, going on, despite, obviously it fluctuates on how in depth it is. But I think it's a smart move in the sense that being that new construction is something that you've kind of more dabbled in, and then the other side of it, doing new construction trim, but focusing on, what your market is already telling you is that downtown is where it's more lucrative and it's primarily renovation, getting teamed up with the designer, things like that, driving you with clients that no matter what are always going to have a home that needs work.
Right.
And you alluded to it with your subs, is that there's different, there's guys that do new construction, and there's guys that do remodeling.
May not be the same guy.
Right.
Never the same guy.
For us, it's a little bit. I guess, Andy, my question to you is that, like you said, that you didn't see the higher end market until you got out of the spec and connected with a designer through social media. Now you're into these custom products where they're bringing in fine finish guys like yourself to do this. I feel like a lot of times we get into this kind of scenario where now we're comfortable. You got the work, you're trying to work on your guys, trying to work on your systems and all that stuff. At one point, this is where I feel like when you're talking and you're going, I'm going to have 2 guys that run, custom trim, and then I'm going to be with the other guy. I feel like, why not just get 4 guys and then just find the work for these guys and run the company and then go back and forth between the two and actually put the bags down. That way you don't get caught with the blinders on and then not see that there's a whole market that's now opened up to you that's custom.
Yeah.
I mean, like
yeah,
what?
I think the biggest problem here is that there's the lack of people to be able to pull for those 4 guys. It's not here. That's my biggest problem. I'm starting to connect with some local guys. I just a guy emailed me yesterday. He recently moved to the area like 3 months ago, and he is a little bit more in tune with some of the nicer, because he's not from here. It seems like most of the guys that do really good work are not from my town. So like my tile guy that I think does the most fantastic tile I've seen in person for here is not from here, which is why I think he's good.
I think we say that to Tyler all the time. It's like, then why not explore options outside of where you live? And not necessarily mean.
But I wouldn't do it either.
You don't live in you don't live in Wellesley.
No, but it's go ahead.
I mean,
are you talking about like relocate, like move, or are you talking like just branch out and go further radius?
That's an extreme, right?
Like what's sure. growing the radius, I guess.
But
like
your tile guy didn't move to install tile for you. He's just driving a longer distance. Is that right?
No, he moved from like Washington State.
Oh, well, I read that wrong.
I'd move from
Washington.
It's a pretty
long commute.
How long does it take him to get there?
He's probably got a Tesla.
It's like, listen, I'll be there in 4 days.
But I'll stay.
We'll have all the grout on site. So you were alluding to the fact that people move from different areas to your area and bring a better quality of work.
Yeah, I would say that if somebody moved to this area from another area and were involved in the trades, I would be more inclined to have a better feel of them coming here than somebody else local.
How much?
You're really painting a beautiful picture of your town. I can see.
I know.
How much of your work is downtown?
Good?
But they have it in the schools that they have the trade. So like it is being taught. No.
Yeah, I mean, my guy Cody that was with me, who's now teaching. I talked to him, and he was like, a lot of he said there's maybe 2 kids in there that like he says get it, like understand like where the potential is for this, and a lot of the other kids are in there for just an easy grade.
But like you just said that,
I mean, 2 is a pretty good number for.
But not only that, they see the potential. Who's teaching the potential? Like
Cody.
But you know what I'm saying? Like the beyond the classroom. Like when I was at social studies or science, I never saw the potential of using it. Like this is what I see is that like who is teaching these people the actual potential of making a living? Like should you pop in there once a semester to be like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm doing. He and I have talked about that, and he's trying to get a feel for what he's allowed to do and that kind of thing. But yeah, we're definitely talking about that and me coming in to talk to the class at some point. There is a technical institute that's about 30 minutes south of here, and I actually went down there and found some guys 2 of the guys that were with me were from there.
but it was through the local university. So they moved, to Lynchburg to go to college, took the class, and then, they're here for a year or two, and then they're moving on to wherever they're going.
So I guess, are you also expanding your, I don't know, Rolodex to like other designers, architects that they have to be out there? No?
Yeah, we, designers in this area are something that wasn't really there was one designer here for a while. I haven't worked with her, but she was kind of the only one for a long time. Now there's a couple of other smaller ones here that are the area starting to accept the idea of a designer, or accept the idea of paying for someone to help with that process.
People don't have time.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to. They'd rather
that's
else.
really that right there. The lack of time has been our biggest. What I've noticed the most, as far as the people that hire the designer we work with, is lack of time. We're
flip flopping here. We're talking about labor shortage, but we're also talking about expanding your Rolodex, as John said. What percentage are you doing downtown?
For the remodels, I would say probably 75% of them are in town.
Why wouldn't you put all of your effort into downtown, into that market where it might drive more of a design-driven project, rather than peel back into the suburbs that you're building at a cost where you're pinching everything?
Good question. I don't really know the answer to that.
Throw it back.
I've seen that as an opportunity. It's one of those things. You look at it, you're like, this would make a lot of sense if I did this. But I have a hard time saying, turning stuff down. I worked so hard to get to the point where I went for starting out. I know I've only been in business 5 years, but prior to that, and then in the first couple of years, it was like, you finish the project. Okay, do I have anything lined up? How am I going to get to the next thing? There's no like real security here yet.
Sure.
Then all of a sudden I'm getting calls from what I wanted for so long, where it's like, hey, we've got this big project. We'd really like for you to do it.
Right.
Pretty much you price it, whatever your price is, we want you to do it. And it's kind of hard to turn those down, because it's like you feel like you're finally in that position that you've been wanting to get to for so long.
That's what I was gonna add. Go ahead.
I was saying now it's just in a situation of I'm approaching this, this fork in the road. And I know that I see this coming, and it's just hard to decide exactly which direction to go and how to do it.
It seems like you're at that point where you're finally starting to make money. You're starting to get the jobs that you want. You're starting to get the customers that you want, and you can't say no to anything. So you're just bringing on more and more, because every job seems like the next best job, and you're almost digging yourself in this hole that it's you're kind of building your company around the work that you're lining up, rather than like building your company and then finding the work that's for it. Which I feel
absolutely.
Nick just had one of those years where it was like, take the work and then figure out how to put people in place, where you look back and then it's like, I just took all that work on and did all that work, and I didn't have the proper systems. I didn't have the proper people. And you're almost just spinning your tires at the end of the year. And you're like, wow, that year was not as profitable, as like carefree. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, where at least you're realizing you're at that crossroads where something needs to budge, something needs to change. You need to do something, which I think it is difficult, especially just losing 2 employees, 3 employees, whatever it may be, to try and see how you fit into all of this. Because I think that you've established yourself enough that you have this customer base now, but it's almost being more selective will create more profit for you down the road. Not necessarily like, I think you're almost like a depression child, where like you didn't have it for so long and now it's in front of you and you're like, just give it to me. I want all of it, where like all of it isn't necessarily the best thing for you.
Yeah. Well, I finally, it took a long time, but I finally got to the point where I don't take on those little small jobs anymore. It took a little bit of time, but I finally don't do that, which
Whose cat?
Peanut gallery, man.
Whose cat is making all this noise? I feel like he just wants to come. Maybe I should get him headphones.
Andy, you were just talking about a small renovation you're doing, like the kitchen swap, right?
Yep.
Where you sub most of that out. That would be considered a small project that you're getting away from?
No. I'm I'm talking like the really small things, like for can you come and we need a rail replaced, or we have
the handyman stuff.
Yes, yeah, that took, because that was what I was known for a long time around here, was that, because those were the small things I was doing while I was working for the contractor that I started out working for.
Right.
So I kind of surrounded myself with those jobs, and it's been taken a while to kind of get out of that cycle. Finally I can say, hey, we don't do that anymore. Here's somebody you can call to look about doing that. So I finally got to that point. And it's, I don't know, it's just really, I take a lot of pride in the things that we do. And so when somebody asks us to do it specifically, or asks me to do it specifically, it's really hard for me to say no and turn that down, because
you feel like you're letting them
do
down.
it.
Right. And
yeah.
And Tyler's exactly right. This past year, that's exactly the situation we were in, and whether you take it as advice or whatever, but that, we took on everything. We took on so many projects. We had so many things going on at one time. And again, the systems weren't there. And I look at you, and you're in a position where you're in the field with the guys every day. You're playing you're project manager in the morning, and then carpenter late morning into the evening, and you're touching base with your subs and have all this stuff going on, where, going back to John's point, rather than trying to build two teams now, develop the people that you have on staff right now so you can peel back and get into a little bit more management, so you can start building a company that will sustain. Because I think John's right in the sense that because you were so immersed in it, unfortunately, you were in a way blindsided by the guys that left.
Yeah, well, and see, that's the challenge. Is I kind of have always been cautious about growing too fast, and so I wanted to kind of get the team built up before I start taking on jobs. And we finally started. That trajectory was there, and we were moving forward. So we start taking on more jobs to support all that, and
right.
You kind of go down that road, and then when everybody pulls out.
I mean, that sucks. Like Tyler said, everything was lining up. You were getting the projects that you wanted. You were making money, and all of a sudden
you're also
they ripped the carpet, like the rug out from your feet.
But you're also taking on those jobs to be able to pay for that payroll. So you're also taking on some of these jobs you may not have taken on just to make sure you can feed that machine in a way. And it's a nasty thing. I guess I want to slide back a little bit to Nick. You asked a great question about, hey, why not just go all in the city? And Andy, you didn't really know what to say to that. How could he? What would be your answer to go all in on the city work? Like, what would be the options? Are we talking about social media?
I mean, there's got to be. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but there's got to be more than one designer. And I think I think you were alluding to the fact that they're starting to develop, more interior designers.
Like that one realtor got you a custom home.
Right. I think
if that's the case, I'll be making it rain on every realtor office. Like with business
Here's my cards. No, I think that is, looking back, is the most important thing is networking and introducing who you are.
Relationships.
And it's even to the point where it's introducing your company or yourself as who you want to be. You like, at one point you were the guy doing the handyman stuff, and there was, whether it was a conversation or whether it just kind of fell into place, you went from being a handyman guy to building a spec home to building a custom home.
And that's a huge jump in itself.
Right, but I don't think there's any issue, or I don't think there's any. I think my move would be to network with people that you want to work with and explain, hey, I might not be who you need today, but I want to get there. Like, give me an opportunity, give me a small project, but getting into that market that, like, Andy, you're a great carpenter. you're a craftsman, you put value first. Like you're dedicated to it, and you're being restrained by the fact that your market won't accept that. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that you're immersed in the field all day. Which, listen, I think back, like, I loved being in the field, but there was a time where I knew I couldn't. And as much as that has sucked, the positive side of it started to weigh more and more and more the more I was on the business side of it. And I think that's where you start developing the business and start developing in the network and start developing your value to your market, because you're dedicated to it day in and day out, and it's not an 8:30 email to a designer that popped up in the city. It's it's you're at our office and say, hey, this is what we can offer you.
Yeah, well, and the carpentry in general is difficult to find. I mean, I'm looking, and I've looked for other subs, like carpentry subs, people that I would trust enough to let them do certain aspects of what we're doing, and I'm having trouble finding people within that specific bracket. So because I can't find anybody, that leaves we ultimately have to do it. So that's where I have
now you're more
trouble.
valuable.
Yeah, but exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think the move is to hire subcontracted carpenters. I think the move is to double down on who you have and be selective and become and be more valuable to the designer, thus, creating a bigger profit margin.
But how do you teach guys that are new, that are green, when you have a custom home? I love you, love you to death.
It's hard,
but you're stressing me out. Like
No, I know. I mean, that's the reality of it. That's the reality of where I am.
So how do you do it?
Just
how do you teach guys when, like, I know when I brought on like an apprentice from North Bennett Street School, I'm like, all right, I figured I could piggyback some of my subs to teach them. Like, hey, I'll pay you just to put eyes on how carpenters work. Just It's like watching TV, but it's real life. Like, just go watch them. And then they struggle doing that, and it was like, but I physically can't be there every day to, hey, this is why you're watching this guy, or this is why you're doing this. So I can't even fathom how you're able to put enough into a guy or a girl that's going to work for you while you're still, I guess it's like being present for your kids at home. It's like, how are you present when you know that there's a job that's kind of imploding behind us, and it's like my phone's blowing up for something else, but I got to answer this question in front of me and give this kid 100% so he feels like he should come back tomorrow. Like, how does that even work?
Well, and honestly, the new construction trim is kind of, I use that as like a training grounds, to be honest. So it's, when we're doing production style trim, I can set somebody up and say, okay, I need you to cut, however many of these pieces of this, and then kind of set them on that path. And we're working on a coffered ceiling. So the new kid, I had him, run a bunch of, 1x with a slight back bevel, just run it through the table saw, for like an hour. He just run in pieces and getting ready.
This is a test. That's my old boss.
It's like the Karate Kid.
Yeah.
If you still have 10 fingers by the time you're done with this, you can come back.
I tell him it's like the Karate Kid. You're going to sand the floor and paint the house, and then when you're done, you're going to be able to step back and see that you've learned something.
I mean that requires you, though.
Yeah.
And
sure.
that's the hardest thing here is I'm looking back in when I was in your position and making that transition. And I don't have the answer as to how, but it like I feel like you're just one person away, or I don't know if the guy that has a little bit more experience has the ability to kind of take charge, but there has to be some sort of just like opportunity for that. That damn cat.
Just wants to be on.
At least he's being quiet. He's actually annoying me right now. I don't really like cats that much.
But Andy, I think like
He's also, I feel like, I mean, from my point of view, is when I had my first company and I had the bags on, and I would still be like that. I was forced to become that kind of bags on GC that would help the framers, because I went from doing smaller renovations that were 2,000 square feet, kitchen, family rooms, ballroom, stuff like that, and then jumped to like
you've made the reference to ballrooms twice
dude,
in this
it was
podcast.
the first time. No, I didn't.
Not in this episode, but
But
in the 90 episodes that we've recorded.
But no, then I jumped right into doing like houses, and maybe I wasn't ready, but I didn't know to take the tool belt off and to be like, all right. And I would work as a GC with my tool belts on all day, answering phone calls, putting out fires, however you want to put it, and then I'd have to work from like 4 o'clock on when everyone else took off, and that wasn't sustainable.
But
for,
not
for
only
me
that,
or
but
my
you
family.
were like, correct me if I'm wrong, you were a great project manager GC for the subs and the guys on site, but a lousy sales. Like lousy on the sales side because you couldn't dedicate enough time to it.
I couldn't dedicate enough time to anything. It wasn't enough time in the day to do both, and no one was telling me, hey, this is where you need to focus, because it was literally just reactionary,
Right.
everything. So now, 15 years later, going back at it, not having the bags on, I realized that I could probably run $1 million worth of work with my bags on.
Mm-hmm.
And with my bags off, I can run close to $6 million. So, like, to put the numbers at play there, it's like, all right, if I keep them on because I love this part of the business, but is it really making me money, and am I going to be profitable at what I'm doing with the opportunities coming at hand? I don't know if that made any sense, but it's like you can also fail at that, where it's like I didn't fail as a business, but I failed at not having enough time for my family out of the 24 hours that are left in a day.
Well, I would be super excited to get some guys trained up to enough to where I could back off in the field. I mean, truly, that's ultimately what I would like to do. I mean, obviously I realize that what I'm doing now is not sustainable in the long run, just because I'll burn myself out. Like, I get that.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to find the path that gets me to that point. Not necessarily the fastest, but the most,
Most efficient. I mean, do you look
efficient.
Do you look back, back in June, right? Did you think you were close to the point where you could have walked away and let those guys run trim by themselves?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was probably usually about a year in, it seems like I can get everybody to the point where, I no longer have to watch over and, hover and, check this and check that and, all that kind of thing. I can back away a lot, but around that time is when it seems like people leave. It's just like high turnover. And I don't think it's for one of the guys, it was a pay thing, but for everybody else, it's not really a pay thing. It's just, opportunity and different, things that they want to do or not want to do.
I feel like there's a very tight threshold between like self-performing and having a few guys and having enough work and saying no to certain jobs than it is to like John, where John doesn't really own any labor and subs everything out. Like, I feel like where oftentimes you get hung up, and like either one of you can correct me when I'm wrong, Nick, or Andy, it's like when you have these jobs in place, and it's not like you're necessarily taking the new jobs on to keep you busy. You're taking those jobs because it's going to create opportunity, and then you're strictly subbing a lot of that out where it's not your labor. And I feel like it complicates things so much, and you start struggling on your own jobs, and whether it's details get lost or you're trying to fill people in. But I feel like it's so hard to kind of balance between what you actually need to keep your people busy and taking on too much work.
Yeah.
Because,
I think sorry.
I just feel like sometimes, like, even when it gets to the point where you're looking to strictly sub work out while you have in-house employees just to keep the job moving along, I feel like that may be an issue. Like, Nick, you subbed a lot of work out that you didn't necessarily bid it as if you were going to sub it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it looks, even on my little bit, it looks like I'm going to make money, because you look at it and you're like, well, I can put a markup on that. But then at the end of the day, I always look back and I'm like, did I really make money on that by the time I'm bouncing around, and then I'm liable for all of that work, and then I'm trying to coordinate things, and then some people are here and the efficiency lost and everything else.
I mean, that's a big reason why we hit the brakes is that we started subbing out a lot of carpentry. And we subbed out trim carpentry and some framing, and we always had to do, like Andy called it, light framing or framing cleanup. Or if we were, if we had a ton of trim, we bring in some additional subcontractors to run through it. And not that they did a bad job, but it just wasn't it wasn't us. Like the details that we've spent the years putting together, or the way we put things together, were lost because we were then subbing it out. Where that was a big reason why we said we need to slow down, we need to be more methodical, and we need to focus on who we are and who we are, carpenters that are on site performing all of the carpentry and millwork. And I think that's where I was going with, Andy, you made the reference of finding good trim carpenters. Having that mix between your own carpenters and subcontracted trim carpenters is a very delicate, difficult thing to balance, where it's either you're going to be the carpenters or you're not going to be carpenters.
But I mean, it's still like, even today, I connected with a kid that is kind of like a one-man show, opened his own company. I still need a gray area from my production guys that are going to be putting trim in, GDM and the other guys, and then guys that are going to punch out stuff instead of because I got a new truck and I'm putting John on my old truck. So like, I'm doing that to force myself to not use him as a resource to kind of punch stuff out and use him just as management. So I guess it never really changes. There's always still this gray area that's created when either your pace of a build increases and then guys have to move on, or hey, they're more efficient in this spot where I'm not going to have guys gonna come back and feather and crown where the cabinets are. I guess
I would just like to look at it if, like, I don't know Andy's exact experience. Obviously, I like engage with Nick on a higher level more often, but like, I know I would like to see if last year, Nick, you took like some of those jobs that you subcontracted a lot of stuff out on that you didn't necessarily anticipate, and like got rid of them entirely, or just pushed them off and did them down the road, what that profit would look like versus the way that you ended up having to do it to keep schedule and everything else. Had you not had to, or you were like, if it was just one job after the other, if you were structured that way, would you have been more profitable? Obviously you would have, there would have been a lot of things that were different, but at the end of the day, would it have been more profitable for you to just take that approach rather than the additional volume and the additional sales?
I wish I could tell you. I didn't have my shit together.
No, but I often, that's like one reason why, I mean, I'm an extreme opposite example of that, but I'm always like, I could take on more work. And like, I know that the way that I do things, talk about scalability, sustainability, all of that, I'm not blind. I'm not ignorant to that. I completely understand. And like, working towards different things for retirement and all of that may not be a traditional path. But I look at myself and I'm like, do I want to bring on 3 more people, subcontract more work, have more liability, more responsibility, more time put into it to basically walk away with, at the end of the day, close to what I am now?
Yeah.
And
but Tyler, look at the other way. What happens if you approach it differently, where 3 different designers that you really respected came to you with cool clients, healthy budgets, and cool designs? Would you have then made the right steps to bring on that added burden to create those designs?
Maybe. I just don't like me on a personal level. What drives me isn't as much like I want to do all of these for these people now as like, hey, I'd rather give 100% to one. And then if the other people want to wait, I'll get to that. And again, it's not right and it's not wrong, but like, I don't look at it as if I don't strike while the iron's hot, that nothing else is going to come up.
I think that's the cleanest approach out there. You agree?
Yeah.
Just to give you some street cred there, credit that.
Yeah, but
I mean, that's the way it should be.
That's why Tyler and I have talked about it, about us, and yes, we're a team of more people now, but I still want to take that methodical approach. And that's what I love about, like, you and I talk about all the time. It's like that's what we're envious of Tyler, is that, like,
all day.
It's like one project, 100% all the way through, and like you're right. I think it is the cleanest approach. It's when you mix the two, it becomes very difficult. And Andy, I think that's where you're at right now, is that you're considering mixing, or you're considering how to grow, or you have a lot going on. And like John said, it's kind of a reaction where, I hate to keep saying put systems in place, because that's just.
But you're growing.
But you're growing.
Well, I don't know that I would be in this position had I known back in January that I wouldn't have the same crew that I had then.
Exactly.
I wouldn't have taken on a lot of these. So it's right now I'm trying to play catch up, honestly.
And that's what I guess that's what I'm getting at, is could you have known? Like, if you weren't immersed in the field working beside these guys, would there have been telltale signs as a business owner running the business outside looking in, rather than being?
I don't think so. With most of the situations that happened, they were just happenstance. I mean, there was a couple guys, sure, but it was just people make life changes and decisions and do different things, and it just kind of when opportunities present themselves, you have to kind of take it. I mean, I would be in the same boat if a few years back, if an opportunity presented itself, I would probably jump on it.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to loyalty?
I mean, I think Andy's right in the sense that, I mean, most of them were life opportunities.
One guy left. The market right now is crazy like that, but I think that there was always this burden that I had with my employer, that they put so much effort into me that it swung the other way, meaning they would take advantage of my hard work. It was never me going, all right, as soon as I felt like there was another opportunity good enough, I would jump up 2 rungs somewhere else. Mm-hmm. I feel like it happens all the time.
And I've really tried to create a good work environment and a good culture, with the way I try, I don't yell at the guys. I don't cuss at the guys. I try to be very open communication. If you have an issue, talk to me, and same goes for, it's a 2-way street. So I thought that would kind of help, facilitate some of that, but then, it gets down to it. And then, a couple of guys, they left for money and different opportunities that, there's really nothing else I could have done, at the point that we are anyway. And that's the other thing. I talked to several guys, even in this last round of interviews of different people, and, they all want to come in with, and make a pretty decent amount of money without really any experience. And, that has no, I was telling them, what we're trying to sell and what the value that we're trying to bring, you have to be able to bring that before you're of value enough to me to support that.
Right.
And that's a challenge that I run into as well. Is there's a lot of people that, they want to come in as like an apprentice and make more than, some of the more experienced guys out here do.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be tough wherever you are, but if you don't have the economy that can support the higher dollar jobs, it's going to be even tougher, because that's just eating into your profit. And you may, whether you're getting the same result, you don't have enough fluff in there to be able to kind of making that up, which is definitely tough.
Well, the way I explain it, when we're bringing somebody new in your training, I mean, you've got to, something's got to cover that cost, so technically it's me and someone else doing the same job in the intro, in the beginning. So once it gets to the point where I no longer have to stand there and also make sure everything is going the way it needs to, then it no longer is me and another person. It's just that one person. So then therefore my efforts then can be put elsewhere. So it's just a matter of getting people to that point and then,
keeping them.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's uncharted territory for me. If I could have like a couple of guys for more than a year that, I could get them to where I want them.
Have you guys met Andy? I feel like he's the nicest person you could ever meet.
Super cool, man.
Like, I feel like I'd just come work for you for free.
Come on.
No, but see, like anytime I ever met Andy, I feel like last time, or when maybe we were in IBS, you were talking, maybe your wife was pregnant with your second, and she was discussing whether she was going to stay home, go back to work. Like, I feel like I have just down to earth, serious life conversations with you that I feel like you'd be a good boss. Maybe I'm wrong. Like, I don't feel like I'd be a good boss. Like, I feel like you'd be a good boss. I'd work for you.
I mean, Tyler,
That's very kind of you, sir.
I mean, you went through something similar with Steve when he left.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, what can you like? Obviously, you can relate to the position Andy's in because that came out kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, what I looking back on everything and what I kind of see is that the way that I structured everything for myself and for Steve, not that like I wanted to be running two jobs at once, but the idea was to kind of start handing over some of that responsibility. Um, and I think that, you know, with what I do and the way that I run my jobs and who's on our jobs and the level that we try and hit, it can be high stress. It can be a lot of hours. It can be intense. I'm sure that I'm not the easiest person to work for, but the idea was to take some of that responsibility off me. And that was like getting the van and getting the tools set up and everything else. And I think at the end of the day, the response, although like there was discussions about responsibility and doing more and having more hands-on and taking some of, you know, like looking at a job from start to finish and how you would approach that job, and if I weren't here, what would you do? I think that when that actually came to fruition, it was a huge eye-opener, and it was very overwhelming. That maybe I'm not ready for this, maybe this is too much. And I think that it was not that I like let go of the reins, but I think that it created a different dynamic there where it's like, maybe this isn't what I want to be doing. Maybe this is too much for me. Um, so I think that, you know, as that went south, I probably didn't react well to all of that. And whatever was happening on a daily basis just compounded that. And then it's like behind schedule, mistakes getting made. I'm more stressed out. It's money, everything else, that it got to a point where I was just like, okay, this is past the point of no return. I'm already on to the next thing. Like, let's figure out what the next step is. And I don't think that I've structured my company that it would be a huge hiccup to put somebody else in place. Matt was working for me part-time at that point. He would come on full-time. If we needed somebody else, we'd need somebody else. I'm still like, the way that my company operates is myself and a helper, myself and somebody who's more qualified than a helper. It's not like we generally have two leads, which would have been kind of what Steve would have transitioned into, and I would have been able to pull back a little bit or bring somebody else on. But like everything that I had been planning for almost 3 years did kind of fall apart when I kind of stepped back and saw what had happened and what was going on. And I immediately knew that there was a change that needed to be made. I kind of just hit the ground running with that. And I didn't, like Andy could have done, I could have sat back and like, well, I did this and I spent this much money and we put this in place and I invested this much in this or this much time. But it's almost like, for what? You know, they're not that there's going to be another Steve out there, but there's going to be somebody who's willing to learn and who wants responsibility. I have to be the one to kind of put the effort into grooming that person or put the effort into finding who that person is or investing myself in that person and kind of grow from what I learned from Steve and the mistakes that I made and the approach that I had and make changes to get back to where I am and then hopefully further from where I am. But I mean, I understand where Andy is, and it's very easy to look internally and be like, well, it's all on my shoulders. It's always been on my shoulders. But I think that finding somebody else to take that burden off rather than just like wallowing in that yourself and saying, hey, it's all going to be on me, I think is personally my next step. You know, it's like, get my feet under myself, figure out what's going on, keep investing the time that I need to in Matt, and then figure out what my next move is. Whoever's with me, whatever my company consists of that point, but I want the structure of my business to be the same. That's probably a long-winded response to
no, but I think that's important to note is that, I think reacting in a way where you not only are trying to change the people that are involved, but also what you're focused on in business or how your business is structured will compound the stress related to it, where it's like you've already spent all this time developing who your company is and what your company is growing into and what you want to focus on. But you had the unfortunate event of losing a bunch of people. Focus on bringing those people back onto the path that you've already kind of carved out.
Yeah, so I think it creates opportunity as well. When all of this happened, it's like, well, I could start subcontracting more work out, or I could take a less hands-on approach, or I could just manage, or I could just hire help, or I could find somebody, who's got 5 years experience that maybe I need to change habits or change some techniques, but maybe I'm ahead of the game from where I was before. I have to slow down enough to figure that out and make that decision and make that move, which I have yet to do because I'm still like trying to dig myself out of that hole. But I think that with that, like closing that chapter in my life and in my business, I also think that there's been a lot of opportunity that's been created and potential for me to make changes that long term I'm going to be better off.
Yeah, all this happens for a reason. It always puts us in a different position, and it's easy to look back after you've gone through it and say, okay, well, that was why this happened.
Yeah.
And I know that,
Yeah, down the line for sure. Well, in the moment, it sucks.
Did either one of you guys do an exit interview with the guys that left?
An exit interview?
I'm just because you guys can shape it any which way you want when someone leaves to make you feel better about the situation, but to get some facts out there, whether it's an email or whatever. I didn't do it with my first company, and I did it for companies that I worked as a director of operations on. When guys would leave, yeah, they give you whatever reason it is, but then when you give them not face-to-face communication and you send them an email or a survey monkey or whatever it is, and you get a little bit more insight, I always looked for it as,
you did this?
yeah, and it was that way you'd know. No, I just made it up. Like, no, it was to understand.
I knew you were making it up.
It was to understand more without, like, when you ask a client, "Hey, how am I?" and they're like, "You're great, you're awesome." But
I get the reason. I didn't know this is something that you've practiced. I want to know an example.
I want to see him.
No, it's been.
I don't need an exit interview. I'd live with myself for 30 years.
Yeah, no, I know, but like
3 years.
Can you give us an example?
I could just go ask my wife what it's like to live with me.
No, but it's not that. Like, the environment that you're creating, not at home but at work, is different than like the way I am at work is completely different than the way I am at home. And
yeah, I think like it makes a maniac no matter where I am.
I think it makes complete sense. You're
looking for more insight.
We hire these companies to do reviews with clients to get the real truth. Like, what sucked about this job? What could we improve on? So, like, what were some what did you learn from those?
It just gave you a different insight of what it was. Like, let's say someone said they were going to leave and it was because of money, and then you send them an exit survey, and it was like health benefits, because they have 2 kids, and they were honest with the exit interview, where when they were in front of you, they were nervous and they didn't know how to talk and blah, blah, so they just came out with whatever felt right. So that was able to shape, like, BGB. When I lost Rob Isbell, like the day Robbie, I don't know if you listen to this, walked into my office at BGB and he closed the door. No one ever closes the door, my office door back then. And I was like, oh, it's on. And he's like, I got to go. And I'm like, what? I put 4 years into you, And I was like, "You just gonna leave? Like, there's no like warning, like don't pop a flare, no let me know." And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh man." And the conversation was like maybe 5 more minutes long, but then we did an exit interview, and it was like, "Hey, the commute sucked. It was. I wish we had health insurance because I have 2 daughters, and they're getting older." And it was like, dude. That could have been a conversation. Like, we could have nailed that down, and we improved that going forward so I wouldn't lose any more employees. Mm-hmm. But, like, without that kind of an exit interview, and I forget where we had a handbook, whether it was by Paychex Payroll, that gave us an employee handbook, and one of those things that was on there was an exit interview. And that's where we started doing it because we didn't have a lot of turnover, but we wanted to know – I wanted to know as much info as possible on how to improve because – we can all get in this window where, Tyler, you can admit that you're a pain in the ass, but you do want to be a better boss. I mean, you do want to have it where your kids are getting older and there's going to be more stuff that pulls you away from the job, but yet the job is still a commitment that you made with the client. So there's this give and take. It's I always look to improve, and sometimes they're not going to say it to my face.
No, I think. Yeah. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense because, like I said, we ask it for clients. Why wouldn't we ask it for people that have left?
Why wouldn't you want to learn?
Right.
And improve.
And
not my worst fear would be a year from then to lose another employee for the exact same reason because I never asked.
Right.
Because I thought what the reason was.
That's interesting. Good point. I think about when we don't get a job. You know, hey, walk me like what could I have improved on? What was it really like? You said it was price, but was it price? Was it because our fee structure? Was it that our allowances were too high? Like digging into the real nitty gritty of why.
Do you overthink that when it happens? And do you like I try and
when we lose a job?
Yeah, like when I lose a job and I go through every conversation I had with them.
Oh yeah,
and I try and find like the 2 triggers.
Yep.
Where it could have gone fork in the road. And I'm like, that was it. That was totally it. It was when I said this.
Like we lost a job recently, and it was because they said that based on our conversation, it felt as though our management was heavy, and it was a full home renovation, like lift the house off the foundation, full gut, like
management's not needed.
$1.5 million, and I'm like, I was like. And all I kept thinking about was that conversation when we started talking about management. And I was like, I obviously didn't do a good job explaining the process. And I was like, all right, I need, like, I just, over and over and over, I just kept replaying it. I'm like, how could I have explained what we do better so he saw the value in it? And instead, he was like, no, that's too much.
Well, because you got to understand what someone else is selling.
Right.
They might be selling the house lifting they might be selling fear.
Right.
That, hey, lifting this house is going to be a nightmare, blah, blah. And that way, the management, whatever number it is, they could have hid some of it into the lifting of the house, but they emphasized what you may have created as casual.
Right.
I do the same thing every day.
It's the word, like, and then, like, 3 days go by, I'm like, all right, I should not be thinking about this anymore.
Or could you send them a survey and say, hey,
I should.
How can I improve?
I should.
And you know they take time out of the day to be able to give you that feedback.
You know what? I know what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm sending surveys to every project we lost.
You going to send exit interviews, Andy?
Maybe going forward.
Probably not.
Probably not, but maybe.
I'm going to send exit interviews and just read them on the air.
No, you won't.
It'd be fun.
I don't know. It's just a food for thought.
I could probably just get my wife to write something up and it'd be pretty accurate. You know?
I don't know, man. I think you're different. I think you're different at work than you're home. Too.
I'm lovely at home and at work. She's so lucky. She's seriously very lucky.
She's sleeping.
Yeah. So she texted me. She's like, "Oh," I was like, "Yeah, I have a podcast late tonight. It's at 8:30." She's like, "Yes, that means I can go to bed early." I was like, "You go to bed at 8:30 every night. The only difference is like tonight you won't say goodnight to me because I'll be in the studio.
Studio.
I was like, it's
In
no
your studio.
different. Yeah, like you go up to bed with the girls and then I wake you up when I come upstairs. Tonight's no different than any other night. And she's like, yeah, you're right, whatever. That's cool. But she works hard and takes care of the girls. Like 98% of what we have to do with the girls, I just do all the fun stuff. You know, make it look like I'm doing a lot.
Andy, how are you balancing the accounting side of it?
I thought you were going to say the family. We're just digging into family. It's like the 2 kids. No.
Nope, skipped over that.
Skip it right over.
My wife would be proud if she was listening to this.
Back this summer, I've got an accountant to start doing more. I backed off of that because it was another thing. I was looking for anything that I could back off of and kind of give to someone else to sort of help me, get through it. So that was one of the things I implemented. A new accountant.
So you guys say accountant. Actually. I have an accountant and a bookkeeper. So like accountant that does my taxes and overviews. He can look into my QuickBooks anytime he wants. But then my bookkeeper is the day-to-day creating invoices.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't have a bookkeeper in that respect then.
I mean, I think it depends. So like the lady who does all my taxes and bookkeeping is not a certified CPA, but she can prepare and submit all of my tax returns to the federal and state government. The only thing she can't do is if something went to court, she can't like represent me in court or basically respond to whatever they need. At that point, she'd have to go into her Rolodex and use like an actual CPA for that correspondence. But I think it just depends. Like, I think that an accountant could be doing that stuff, or a bookkeeper could, or you could have 2 separate. I don't think it necessarily matters. You guys frozen?
Nope.
I was waiting for someone to talk.
John's like, no.
No, I would have said that. No, I mean, my bookkeeper, she, like, everything goes to accounting at Vintage Builders. I see that as well, but everything goes into that, and it's put on, like, the label of whatever project it is, and it goes right into an invoice. I don't do any of that. And then she texts me and says, hey, it's, whatever. It's at either a value of $50,000 or it's 2 weeks in, and you need to review this, and I'm sending it. But then that all goes into QuickBooks, and Sorry, I got it confused. My accountant reviews that, so he sees our, profit and loss, all that stuff, and he prepares what we're doing for the year or quarter, then year.
Yeah, so my bookkeeper does all that stuff.
I think for me, if I had someone doing that, I would have a tendency to not look at it as intensely, and I feel like I would not be really on top of that stuff as much. I mean, I know that's what they're supposed to do, but I would have no grasp on it. If it was like, hey, I'm sending this to you, take a look at it, I can guarantee you I wouldn't look at it because I'm so busy. I just unless it's sitting in front of me to do it, I won't do it.
So you're doing all the invoicing.
Sometimes that's just better.
But you're sending all the invoicing and preparing them?
Yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah. Especially with
I mean, when we do like a remodel or whatever, we set up a payment schedule from the very get-go. So it's easy. And I'm not having to do a whole lot with that. It's more like, here's draw 1, draw 2, draw 3. So it's not as detailed. And then when we're, doing trim and for houses and stuff, it's just.
Does that allude to the fact that it's fixed cost? Like your payment schedule, you're not basically reconciling every month your costs. And then
no, it's fixed. It's fixed costs. It's like this project will be this, unless change orders or whatever, or different things are. There's some things if we go into it, we know, like we just did this kitchen remodel, we knew that the electrical was going to be all over the map, so we kind of put like what was your the electrician? What's allowance. The best guess? Yeah, and then go allowance, and then go from there. But most of the time we do a fixed cost because at least I've found a lot of people get really nitty gritty with it, and they want to know all the details of everything, and they want to second guess all the different processes. Do we really need to do this? What about this? Where can we like pinch our pennies in this project? And then that ends up being a difficult thing for me because I see value in things that they may not see. So it's difficult, if we give too much information within that, because then they want to micromanage it, so to speak.
Sure.
So how are you pricing those jobs? Are you walking subs through all of them? So that way you have hard costs from those guys?
It depends. I've been doing it long enough now that I have a pretty good database of my own for what previous jobs cost. So I try to keep really good track of the prices. Some guys have square foot costs, so that's easy. And then other guys are, more, it's just kind of a shot in the dark with what they foresee happening.
Tyler, are you GMP, guaranteed maximum price? Or are you?
So with return I guess it depends on the job. Generally, yeah, it's like we're going to give a lump sum bid, but the way that we're doing it, like I haven't really competitively bid a job in a couple of years. Like any job that we've gotten hasn't been competitively bid. So we're kind of like budgeting for the job, and we'll send out our rough budget. And if they want to see numbers, we'll show them numbers. And then once we have like that contract in place prior to whether it's a design contract or a feasibility contract, we're going through pricing the whole job, basically try and get rid of all the allowances. And there'll be like a couple of random allowances that we'll kind of reconcile at the end of the job. But we usually have a pretty good idea of what it is at that point. And then if we have change orders on top of that, some customers for smaller stuff will just hire us if it's a smaller job and just like charge a day rate. But I actually don't like doing that. It's too hard for me to keep track of it. But we are not we're not bidding stuff the way that you guys are bidding stuff.
We're in a similar boat. We're not really price bidding jobs as much anymore.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's coming together the same as everyone else, but we usually try and get a customer like a realistic price of what it's going to be with all their selections made and all that stuff, which is why we get a contract prior to our work contract, if that makes sense. No?
No, it does.
Yeah.
I think if you were doing like cost plus, it would just be the amount of work tracked.
Yeah,
it would crush you. And that's like we've switched to a cost plus model, and it's so much work.
It's labor intensive.
Just all the, like you said, all the documentation, everything is just tracked. It's like it's our biggest struggle now is just creating these systems to streamline it. It's a lot.
But I mean, it's just as much work to, let's say, the scale of your products. Nothing against you guys. It's just the scale of some of the products we're taking on is that to put all to up front load that project with all the pricing and not get paid for it.
Right.
Like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just spreading it out. You're
throughout the project while you're doing it.
Right.
There's difference. Like when we used to do just pre-con, you might spend, I don't know, 80 hours on a bid and then not get paid for it.
Right.
Like that was common when you're trying to get with architects.
It's like setting up for a job, though.
Yeah.
And demobilizing. When you spread it out, it ends up being 320 hours spread out every month, for the entirety. Where if you do it all in the beginning and not get paid for it, for what you're saying, it's a much shorter amount of time.
True.
We're kind of a hybrid where we're trying to bid the project and get a hard number, but most of the projects that we're looking at don't have enough detail to get, so we end up with allowances or best guess estimates.
Yeah, so we have small enough scale and scope that we're able to get all of those details in prior to signing a work contract.
Yeah.
Which just like ends up being longer and more work up front. But then when we go into the job, the only things that generally change at that point are if we open up and something's different.
Yeah. We have
which is easy
we generally
to do with what we're doing.
We generally try to get as much information locked in from the very get-go as we can, so we don't have those surprises or those things to navigate towards the end of it.
I think it's good.
It's a lot more work up front, but in the end, it's not as bad.
Yeah, and as long as you know that that job's yours, it's usually not an issue. Like if I have return customers, I usually don't take a design deposit from them until I get burnt, and then I will.
Fair.
But you know, usually it's just like the first time around till people see how we work and understand what steps we kind of go through to make sure that we're getting accurate pricing. Like I think our last bathroom job, we had like $1,200 in change orders for like the ceiling framing and restructuring. But other than that, the price was the price.
Yeah.
Well, with our designer, she does her, usually by the time we're in, by the time we come in, the job is pretty much not definite, but it's a pretty good, chance that we're going to move forward with it by the time we come in.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's already done a lot of that up front. She gets a deposit for the time that she has and all that kind of stuff. So we're just doing more of the general contracting side of it. And she handles all the, it's worked out pretty well so far. So I don't have to worry about doing an upfront deposit, for the initial project,
you're not
the
just
numbers and stuff.
Yeah, you're not just like pricing every job that she gets on her table. You know that generally
Right.
if she's asking you to price something out, that it's more than likely a job you're doing.
Yeah, and she's already met with them, probably 2 or 3 times by the time I come into the picture.
It's almost like a confirmation. Hey, can you come and look at this design? We're thinking it's in the $400,000 range. Tell me I'm crazy. If not, let's move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And then it's usually more money.
It always is.
They always add stuff.
Always is. I will say we got one project now that it's a complete set of drawings.
Ooh.
Like every single item has been detailed out. We had like 6 questions for the architect. Got right back to us, and I would say it's probably the first time we've ever put together a bid, cost plus bid, that we had every single line item priced accurately.
That's nice.
It was. I mean, it was nice to sit around a table.
Refreshing.
Yeah, to have everything you need, to have all the questions answered.
Now it's 100% on you.
Right.
There's no one to point at. It's like, all right.
Literally the only allowance we have in there is our framing allowance, and it's a master suite renovation because the expectation is that everything is plumb level and square because it's super modern, and we threw a huge allowance in there to basically sister every stud, ceiling joist, floor joist, and we'll work against it. Everything else is fixed.
That's cool.
It's
awesome.
But yeah, I mean that is a big part of it, is having that confirmation, but also a completed set of design and drawings.
Yeah, that would make a huge difference.
Well, Andy, I want to say personally, thanks for making some time out of your schedule. You get a hectic schedule. You got to sort this out. Take a vacation. Clear your plate off. Maybe we'll all come down for a couple weeks and help.
There you go. Hey, after the Thanksgiving time, things should let up a little bit, and I'm going to kind of take some time to refocus and see what direction.
Well, I will say,
change.
I mean, you have a positive outlook, and you know that this is temporary, and I think that's the biggest thing. And I think a lot of people get stuck in the rut of this isn't temporary, this is the end of the world, blah blah blah. I'm never gonna make it through this. But
he has that demeanor, like it's always just chill.
That's what I'm getting at.
I couldn't imagine him yelling at anything.
No, then he goes in the other room, starts screaming at his wife.
I would never do that.
But yeah, so I sent out that we're looking for a last minute podcast guest, and Andy volunteered, so it can't be that bad, right?
He's like, I got time.
That's right.
Either you're like a glutton for punishment, or you really had nothing to do.
Well, you work all day, and then a lot of times I'm working at night doing paperwork and that kind of thing. I'm like, I usually try to take 1 or 2 nights a week to nothing tonight, no work related stuff. So
that's important.
Yeah, I try not to overwhelm as much as I can, which is kind of funny to say.
Yeah, but I think just like anything else, you'll get through it. It's just one of those things where it's our business and it's our reputation and it's our livelihood and everything else. And it is going to fall on our shoulders at the end of the day. And it's just get up, put your boots back on, and figure out what tomorrow brings. And then by the time you know it, you'll look back and this will all be in the past. So
Yep.
hang
Absolutely.
in there.
And that's what this podcast is for. You know, we're all here to support each other, but also to learn from each other and to be, you know, not stuck in the silence of thinking that you're alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you want, give your, like, where can we find yourself? It can be a shameless plug, website, Instagram, maybe the designer that you work with, if there's anyone who listens to this in your area.
Yeah, so we're Modern Oak on Instagram, and then Modern Oak Construction on Facebook. And the designer we work with is Tara Janelle Designs.
And you guys are in Lynchburg, Virginia, not Tennessee.
Not Tennessee, correct.
Yeah, way off. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it.
Andy, thank you.
You rock, brother.
Thank you.
Hang in there.
Appreciate it.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
See ya. John had John Sanford, right, reach out to you, who is a veteran. He started in the Army National Guard. And I guess he said he was deployed in Iraq, maybe somewhere else, and then ended his military stint in the reserves. But he basically called us up, calling us out on the fact that Veterans Day is coming up and kind of challenging us to do something for that. So he said that after he got done in the military, he did some work lobbying for veterans. So I think what we're going to try and do is maybe on, I know it's going to be a week late by the time we record, but maybe on the 12th, which is the day after Veterans Day. So Veterans Day is Monday, the 11th. We'll try and get maybe 3 or 4 people on for 15, 20 minutes, whether you have an organization, you just have a story, you're a veteran, maybe to get on the podcast and just create some sort of a platform to get whatever your word may be or your story out there. And then we'll release that the following week. So if you want to shoot us, whether it's a DM or an email, all of that information will be at the end of this podcast. But get in touch with us if you want to get on. Then we'll coordinate getting you on. Like I said, the 12th of November. We usually sit down around 7 p.m. on Eastern Standard Time.
And our weekly review recap. You guys are, I think now that we're reading them, people are like, "Oh, I'm gonna put something up there." But we got 3 great 5-star reviews.
Thank you.
How many did we pay for?
3.
Zero.
No.
0.
0. So I'm gonna do my best. This first one is long, but being in the trades and real estate for almost 15 years has definitely been a roller coaster of a ride. My victories have come with longevity, but always with uncertainty. I'm not sure how I came across the Modern Craftsman podcast, but it has changed my entire outlook, renewed energy, and direction of not only me as a person, but my entire company. The no BS approach to finding answers, dissecting systems that have worked and failed, discussions on everything from social media to client hurdles makes this not only entertaining, but a great go-to reference on tough topics that are hard, if not impossible, to find in real-world construction scenarios. Most importantly, what truly keeps me coming back waiting for each new episode is a refreshing discussion on how prideful they are working a craft and how prideful everyone else that works in the field should be. The keep craft alive and the I'm a carpenter and proud of it motto is the extra push I need when times get tough. I love what I do and have built a successful business doing it, but let's be real, it's not easy and it won't get easier without the necessary tools, and these guys are it for me. So much so that I have reevaluated some of my systems and protocols and have had immediate success. If you are serious about changing your company culture, this should be a must-listen podcast. From Frank from Canopy Unlimited in Houston, Texas. Frank, thank you for the awesome review. We got another one up.
Solid.
Yeah, that was a solid. And
I feel like that's the nicest thing in
I definitely got chills at that, you know. But no, honestly, I think
they must just be talking about
I think
you too.
the fact that his immediate, him noting that he had immediate success from stuff he's learned from us. I mean, us meaning us in our not 90 guests that we've had on.
Yeah.
Well, I guess some were just us, but We get another one from John Boy 314. Great podcast and format. Awesome guests from across the board. I've learned so much about how GCs look at projects in different perspective than me as a plumber who would look at the job but still relate to so much. Great work, guys. And then Chris, love listening to these guys. As a young business owner in our industry, this has quickly become my most useful development resource and morning afternoon drive routine. I appreciate how real they are and how they're not afraid to go down a rabbit hole and really dig into a topic. I'm sure it annoys some listeners. I'm sure it does.
We've heard from them.
But to me, this is where the true value lies. Thank you to the three of you for taking the time to put out this content and bettering our industry. Otter Creek Homes, Chris Atwood. Chris, appreciate it very much, sir.
Yeah, thanks. It's funny because I was having a conversation with somebody recently who wanted to start a podcast. And she was like, is it worth all the effort that you put into it? And it's, if you think about it strictly from your own point of view, you know, like how difficult it is to set aside 3-4 hours, whatever it may be, every week with the three of us. Like, I don't devote 3 hours or 4 hours of my week consistently every week to like my wife and kids. You know, like to set that aside every week is extremely difficult, but then realizing what people are getting out of it and how much it does actually help people. Because I think it, like, I lose sight of that.
If we didn't, I mean, every time I read a review or get feedback, that's what lights that fire. If it wasn't for that, I'd be like, no, it's not worth doing the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like what I said, you know, that the amount of effort that it takes, and like, you know, we're not necessarily monetizing this. We're doing it for the right reasons. And sometimes you lose sight of those reasons, but reviews like that and hearing what people, you know, how much it does help them kind of makes it all.
I mean, let's be honest, podcasts are out there, so most publications can pour more sponsors into something, and the content is secondary.
Sure.
Our only goal is content.
Right.
And knowledge and communications and conversations. And that's really this is therapy.
It is. With that being said, make sure you guys leave a review so we can read it next week. You can email us info@themoderncraftsman.org, and the website themoderncraftsman.org, or Instagram _moderncraftsman.
Keep the guest suggestions coming. Topics.
Heck yeah.
All that. You guys shape this podcast.
And I like what Tyler did this week. If you're going through a tough time and you just want to talk, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, don't forget about the 12th. Let's get a few people
Cape Cod Lumber.
Oh, it's right.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about November 12th for John's thing. But I'm talking. What about December 12th?
Yeah.
Cape Cod Lumber, Randolph.
Live.
Gee, that's
It's coming up.
Make sure you guys register on the Cape Cod Lumber website.
Let's sell that sumbitch out.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's probably like, shave the stash,
keep the stash. For every person that comes to Cape Cod Lumber with a stash, we'll get a free beer.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. And free lumber.
Whoa, we can't sell that.
Okay. Never mind. I take it back.
Forget it.
Either way, we hope to see you guys there.
It'll be a blast. There's a lot of good talks there besides us.
Yes, sir.
So it's worth the day.
Take care.